live. I hope that everyone can hear us, see us. Um, hey, Dima, how you doing?
Doing good, doing good. Good to be back. I think it's been like what 2 weeks since the previous one. I felt so much more.
Well, yeah. We had kind of a 3 week break this time because of many holidays and Easter. So happy Easter, happy Passover, Ramadan, so many other things that happened this this time, this period. So, but we happy to be
Res-
back. We happy to be back.
Resurrection Day, like always.
Resurrection Day, yeah, exactly. Everything. So, okay, let's dive straight into it. If you have any questions, if you have something that you would like us to talk about and to discuss, we will have kind of a very intense and concentrated time at the end for the Q&A. But I do believe that in our tendency, we tend to also address things as they come. So feel free to type and write anything that you think that we could maybe share or help with. So, Dima, all right. So this stream is about the pre-release of 0.14. Sorry. Um, and I believe that the release should be out by sometime
Next
next
week.
week.
Yeah, exactly. We are wrapping some final stuff right now, and I believe like mid next week it will be kind of officially released. This release is a bit different, and I'll soon explain why. But um, I believe around Tuesday-ish we'll do like a public announcement with the release notes and etc.
Amazing, amazing. So let's dive straight into it and let's discuss what we can wait for.
Awesome. So just so kind of we I know who we have with us here. So would love kind of to hear where are you from in the world?
Yeah, your time because we know what time it is for us, but
Yeah.
um,
Hello, Gerard.
yeah, we
Hey.
have Gerard, we have Shubham. Um, where are you coming from, folks?
And we have Sumit here with us. Good to see you all. Sweden 1402. I'm so glad we are closer to Sweden now. Now that we have the daylight saving kind of without it, so it's only 1 hour difference. So very
It's always
nice.
1 hour difference.
No, but I think it was like 2 hours in some time, or maybe it
How?
was
if
with
we
UK.
if we both have the
Oh, we
day
did.
saver,
I didn't know they also have the daylight
they all
saving.
yeah they have to.
I know some countries kind of disabled the whole thing, and like some. I know even some places in
Opt out at the time zone
yeah,
differences.
like I think it was a thing of the past, kind of, and like I know that a few states in the United States kind of thinking about canceling it as well. So I hope we will cancel it.
Yeah.
Oh, you
Look,
see, so David
I'm
is canceling.
drinking from a Novu cup.
It's
Uh,
funny because like the mirroring of the camera, I'm like seeing Uvon.
one.
It's like reading, on the mirror.
Yeah. All right.
All right, cool.
Uh,
So many folks here. Really nice to have you all from all around Europe, Asia, and maybe the States even. Nice.
yeah, we have people that usually join us kind of through the 10-15 minute kind of point, so it's fine. Be uh, we will be honoring those who are here, and we will just start and get straight to it.
Amazing. So let's talk about 0.13. And I think this version is a bit different than previous version because the focus of the team was really about, and not the whole team, but I think big part of the team was really around performance optimizations and kind of making sure that Novu scales with higher usage. And this is coming from incredibly crazy growth in the usage of the platform, where we're seeing millions of events processed and tens of millions of events already. And this is how can we support scale, and specifically for our on-prem customers that working with it might be millions of events a day that they're sending, and like how can we ensure stability, how can we ensure availability, and also making sure we are handling the throughput correctly. So a lot of the focus around this cycle was around those areas, and we've touched a few different aspects of the performance of Novu during these few weeks. And next week, when we will be releasing the release notes, so we'll provide a bit more information regarding kind of the big differences. We do have some breaking changes in terms of the deployment of the architecture, and I will touch a bit more today. And we will also kind of provide the written information, obviously, once the version is actually out there. So let's speak about the first one. So as you know today, so basically Novu is part of a few services, and the main service is obviously the API service. We have the web service, we have the widget service, we have the WebSocket service, and basically the API is some sort of a monolith that kind of does. Oh, like the video is bringing out. Emil, are you able to hear me like without?
Yeah, I can hear it good. Um,
Oh, seems like there is some latency. I don't know if it's latency or maybe like a bad connection. Let's see if my connection. Yeah, seems like the connection is quite well.
the connection for me should be good as well. So let's
Yeah,
just.
maybe it looks like on YouTube it kind of goes. Uh, yeah, let's give it a moment and see if it helps. One, two, check, check. Is it getting any better?
By the way, is it only the video breaks or our sounds and our voices as well?
Maybe I can reduce the video.
Yeah, I reduced mine, so just
Let's go
um,
to 7 to 20. Let's see if it helps. Maybe we're like killing all the bandwidth on YouTube with our HD cameras.
the quality is too good, folks. Stop.
4K, all my wrinkles and stuff. Like, come on.
So on my feed, like I opened YouTube myself, it looks fine to me.
All right,
So
let's give it another try, folks. If you feel it's any better, please let us know so we are not talking to ourselves here. Awesome. So
yes.
I'll get back to it. So basically, the way it works today, and maybe if I will share my screen here, let me find the actual thing I would love to showcase. Okay, can you showcase my screen,
Yeah,
Emil?
your screen is shared.
Awesome. So from the monorepo structure kind of page, we all seeing here, and we can also look at the architecture side, and those will be updated quite soon. But basically, we have those kind of main components at Novo. So we have the API, which is some sort of a monolith, basically, that is kind of handles most of the work with Novo. So when you interact with Novo, you usually will be interacting with this API. It's basically contained all the trigger information, and it also processes the actual jobs that are triggered using Novo. So as you know, once a job is triggered, we're putting it inside a queue. So this queue is stored in Redis, and we're using the fantastic package from the folks at Task Force called Wool and Queue. And then we have a couple of workers that actually we have two queues basically. One is responsible for the fan out process, and one that is handling the messages after they are already fanned out to multiple subscribers, basically. So one of the first things we've done today, we have this API and this second service called the WebSocket service, which is again independently scalable to handle more concurrent users connected basically uh, to getting real-time updates about notifications. And until today, these were the only kind of backend services working on the Novo behalf. We obviously have others such as the webhook service and the inbound mail bars that are available on the cloud that are handling about kind of replies of emails. But really, the whole processing and heavy lifting was sitting here under the API package. And we had quite a lot of problems with this, and this is comes to independently scaling the actual workers when we are processing new events and new notifications to be sent to the users. So prior to that, in order to scale our workers, we had to deploy like a whole instance basically of the API again and again, which because of all the overhead there, like scaling it was obviously more expensive because it has much more responsibilities. The footprint was much higher, and there was like a lot of noisy things because when you're processing the actual notifications, you might impact some management API calls and etc. So the very first thing we are doing right now, and this is and you can and we'll bring it back. So basically what we're doing is we created a new service called the worker service, and this worker service sole responsibility is basically processing the incoming notifications regardless of throughput. So what happens right now is that API, kind of the events trigger endpoint in the API became a very some sort of a dumb endpoint, and the only thing it can do is it does some basic validation on the actual trigger, and then it basically puts this message inside the first queue that is responsible for fanning out the actual messages to multiple messages per subscriber after that. um,
Mm-hmm.
and basically all the processing of those workers are now sitting on a separate service. So basically this service is not internet accessible. Its whole job is listening for the queues and process them as they come. Internally, for our cloud service, we are basically implementing an auto-scaling functionality depending on the queue size. So, for example, if we're having a peak of incoming requests, we are able to dynamically scale basically the number of workers that process those events to make sure that we are in a net positive kind of flow, that we don't have more pending jobs than we actually can process in a concurrent time. And for example, where we're not in a peak times, for example, and we see a few of those like kind of peak delivery rates specifically around the morning and the beginning of the week, and some more cooldowns in some parts of like the US night or European night, where we might not have this high throughput, and we can scale down the systems to our like minimum amount of workers that they still can handle quite crazy scale. But again, uh, for us to kind of scale this is become much an easier task. So it's like an independent unit. We can deploy it independently, and we don't have to redeploy the whole kind of API service with all of its connected things. And obviously, it will also reduce the amount of load it has on the actual API management service. That again, eventually also affects the notification center feed API and like the scene count and etc.
I have a question regarding for example, the response rate or something that you can maybe share with us in terms of how long it took for example, a request before and after the implementation of the new workers.
So the actual workers, kind of thing is this is mostly targeting not the actual speed of the processing, but the actual
Okay.
concurrence and throughput we can sustain.
Mm,
We've done a lot of work on the performance optimization side of things, and I will speak about it just in a second. But regarding that, is that we can just deal with much more concurrent requests. And we've seen organizations scale with the Novu managed service to thousands of requests a minute, individual organizations. So for us to be able to sustain all of this scale and kind of scale dynamically without interfering the other tenants on the system, like we had to have so much, like a bit of a smarter, kind of scaling mechanism there than the one we previously had that was mostly relying on the actual CPU and memory footprints of the service versus the actual
mhm.
queue contents. And this is kind of one of the big changes we're doing right now. Um, I'm curious, how does NovaHQ host Novo? I know this is all about you guys use ECS with Fargate or just EC2 instances, not super no question, but more of curiosity. It's a very good question. So we do use ECS with Fargate, and it's basically we are deploying multiple workers. And again, right now we have an ECS service basically for each module we have in the system. And then right now we are adding basically a new container service to ECS, which will be the worker service. And again, it will be independently scaled once we deploy it right now. It is already running and working in our staging environment. And this is something that we already kind of been testing for the past week or so with kind of heavy load testing and etc. to make sure that it's kind of meets our expectations. And we will begin a gradual rollout during this week and mid next week also, before we release the actual final version of it. So very big change. It is a breaking change because basically it requires our customers to also spin up the worker service on their own, where previously they only needed to spin up the API and the other services. So now they need to spin the worker service as well. But from kind of the good part of it is, again, the system in its current scale will be much cheaper to scale to process more concurrent throughput, specifically for companies that demand, the higher delivery rates or like higher load systems, so it can scale with them versus kind of on a more limited way of scaling the system, that is to scale the whole API instance basically as it is right now. So it was a huge change, and it was like we had Pavel from our core team kind of working really hard for it, because during this migration we also pushed quite a lot of code to the next branch, so we kind of needed to make sure we can keep up to date the fork, and it was not an easy task because we've done a lot of other optimizations in this cycle, which I will address right now as well. So the first one, moving the actual worker nodes outside of the main API, and like this is we knew this will come. We just like curious, okay, when should we do this? Because like, in the philosophy of myself, like I really try not to over optimize things, before they actually need it, because sometimes you don't really understand kind of the main usage until you actually face it. So we thought that like it's a very good time right now to focus on this area, and I'm really happy to ship it quite soon. So the other part, and this is regarding caching, and caching is, if I would kind of form, I think we have all technical people here, but just kind of in a very very quick demonstration of what caching is I would ask ML right now, hey ML, how much is 322 times 128? And it will take for ML some time, and he opens his calculator and he does a lot of
Can you
calculations.
repeat that?
328
Okay.
times 128.
Okay. It's
So all of this time processing the request from the API, and then Emil has found the answer, which is 41,984. And basically, what caching is I will ask Emil the same question right now. Emil, how much is whatever I just asked you before? And Emil will,
I
immediately
just will
respond.
show you my screen. Yeah. I don't need
Exactly.
to do it again.
So this is caching. And one of the things that we, oh yeah, okay, thank you for the
For the
mirroring. So
mirroring.
exactly. So this is basically, and probably the answer to my question won't change, every time. Whenever I will do this calculation, probably
Yeah.
I will get the same response. Like we don't need to do this whole heavy lifting calculation, opening up, the phone and like doing all of this stuff. So Novu was using caching quite heavily in a lot of areas, but we expanded the usage of the caching service to more areas in the system. So basically, a lot of the endpoints today, things that are not frequently changed are cached right now. For example, things like your workflow template, which might be changing from time to time, but it's basically, it's not changing, every second for companies that like triggering, the Novo trigger engine 10,000 times a minute. The workflow might change, once in a couple of days, but we don't need to go to our database to get the whole information and, all of those things prior to serving our customers. So basically, once we have this rolling out, it means that a lot of the requests will be hitting the MongoDB database on a much lower rate, and we can increase the actual throughput and also reduce the latency it takes for us to respond to things, because uh, Novu uses Redis, and we've introduced the Redis cluster support in 0.14 version. So basically, right now you can work with Novu across a sharded Redis cluster, basically, meaning you can have multiple primary nodes, and Novu will actually know to split the keys between those different cluster nodes and kind of also reading the information from the replica nodes of this Redis cluster. So, meaning we have a dedicated primary node which we are doing mostly writes for, and we have the actual read clusters that we can reduce the load on the main Redis as well, because, and again, this is mostly to make sure that we are able to sustain like much faster response times, and also reducing the load on the MongoDB instance of things that might not be changing so frequently. Obviously, like there was a lot of work around, in programming they say like there is a two infinite problems, and this is naming things and cache invalidation and off by one errors is the regular joke there. So there is a lot of work about how to implement the cache invalidation, not only for it to work but also to have a great developer experience around implementing cache for new entities, and kind of how to make it seamless to not make mistakes of forgetting to invalidate something and etc. So we had George doing an incredible work over the last few weeks about it, so really appreciate it. And I think again, with this new implementation, we've seen like response times for most endpoints went down from like in average, like by almost by like 300, 400, 500%, depending on the like situation and obviously in the queries and the size of your deployments as well. um, and by that there was a lot of optimizations in the actual authentication middlewares, and like we really kind of did a lot of great work, and some of this work has even not been yet deployed. So you will be expecting, again, by the time we release the point 14 version, everything will be there. But on our cloud users, over the next few days, you should be experiencing very noticeable kind of response rates from our main services. So really really exciting. And we had a previous question from Mark, I think. Will you guys update deployment docs so that are also using Fargate can update too? Yeah, of course, Mark. We'll provide kind of the information and the new GitHub container registry images that you need to spin up, and like the parameters you need to pass there and etc. We already updated on the next branch, the Docker Compose and things like this, but we'll provide a proper release notes regarding that once it comes out. And obviously, feel free to reach out to us on Discord and kind of any thoughts or questions you might have. This change is backwards compatible, meaning you don't need to migrate any of your data or something like this for it to work. It's just kind of making sure that this new worker service is running when you deploy it. So
Best
that's
type of change.
the best. Yes, it was a lot of work to make it like this, and I really hope kind of the broad community will also enjoy it as well. So this is regarding the caching, and the Redis cluster is again a big thing, specifically for high load systems. We are like on the managed service, we are managing maybe uh, because we manage, the scale for a lot of customers, and like for the self-hosted, it might be like a one customer thing. So basically for us, it's like the scale is enormous, and it's keep doubling every month or so. So we might have things that like the managed service might experience loads that some instances not, but kind of those added value is also will be accessible like to the broad audience as well. So I'm really excited about this. Um, so this is regarding the caching thing, and there was a lot of work around that. The third aspect of performance that we've been fine tuning quite a lot is that the work around indexing. And we've been teaming up with the MongoDB folks and a great kind of consultant team to kind of make sure that we are optimizing our indexes for the usage of Novu. And we kind of went over all of our hot collections to make sure that all of our queries are at peak performance in terms of index utilization. So we also removed all the unused indexes we had, and we kind of redefined all the relevant indexes for the deployment. The indexes themselves are available on the code, so you can, if you will be reading, I can provide like some of the information a bit later, but looking at the actual DAO repositories, at the end of each DAO, we actually have the relevant indexes that are part of it. For new deployments, they will be just created for you. But for people already deployed, you will have to manually go and make sure those indexes are up to date with their actual MongoDB instance, and they're kind of matching. So with it, like again, the overhead over MongoDB is significantly improved when it comes to actual index utilization, and the changes were there quite dramatic, like for some of the query types we've seen. It's not only that we didn't have like an uncovered queries, but some of the queries that were covered right now using a more targeted indexes. And again, taking in mind that we don't want to take too much RAM out of the database service. So there was a lot of thinking about how to structure this, and we also got quite a lot of help from the MongoDB team, which is really helpful. So indexing is a very big change in this cycle and our indexing strategy in general. And we've been learning a lot, like from the MongoDB team, about particular edge cases and how to utilize them and etc. So this is regarding the 0.14 version and indexing. Already, since I was filling up quickly in 12, will this be addressed in point 14? We need to differentiate. Novu uses Redis for two cases. One is for the queue, and the other one is for the actual caching service. And inside the caching service, we have two things we're doing there. The first one is distributed locking, is making sure that, for example, this is more relevant to digest events. So let's say you are sending 100 concurrent events for the same subscriber in the same second. We need to make sure that we are creating only a single digest out of those 100 requests. So basically, we are using a distributed lock system above Redis to make sure that there is a locked instance of this particular subscriber, to make sure that there is only one digest created when concurrent requests are hitting Novu. So it's really hard for me to say, Gerard, out of this question, like which type of Redis exactly you have been filling out. But depending on your use case, yes, you should see kind of a much more smart management in terms of the Redis cluster management. And you could also utilize the cluster functionality and sharding after version 14. And we can chat about this in more detail on Discord and support, so we can better understand your use case. So this is regarding indexing, which is a big one. And the next step we also worked quite a lot on optimizing is implementing read preferences um, on the MongoDB cluster we have right now. So basically, instead of reading only from the primary nodes in MongoDB, we are reducing some of the queries that are not like not sensitive to a replication lag of a few milliseconds, or like a 10 millisecond, 20, 30 millisecond lag between the replication actually happens. So a lot of the queries right now are directed to the actual the read preference was directed to the replica members of the cluster instead of the primary node. So basically, the secondary nodes are being utilized in a much better way right now. And again, this reduces the load from the main MongoDB instance, and it kind of able to use it in a much smarter way. For some of you who don't have a MongoDB cluster enabled, again, this change is backwards compatible, so you won't notice any change. But for those who are using our MongoDB cluster, which we highly recommend for availability, this you will notice also a significant improvement and better cluster utilization after this version. Um, so read preference we've touched. The second one, and it's a very important one. Okay, let's see. We have some question. Can we some advanced demo of digest of documentation fields and complete for use cases? So this part is being in work right now by our DevRel team in terms of enhancing the documentation, providing better example projects for different languages and different use cases. So you can expect a lot more changes in the docs in the next few weeks. And we started to roll out some of them already during this month. And there will be much more changes in the docs section and example and like starter projects and everything related to that.
To that point, I would like also to add, if you would like to suggest any particular use cases that maybe we could even create some videos and short videos around, or anything of that type, I would be more than glad to do it. So just head over to our Discord server. Feel free to reach out to me or to any of the moderators or the team, something that you would like us to maybe demonstrate, or something that you would like to us to show you, and we will gladly do that or find the best way to do it.
Amazing. So The next area of focus for us in terms of the performance is TTL indexes. And basically, a TTL index says that there might be cases where we don't want to store historical data, longer than a particular amount of time. So this is specifically relevant for companies that sending, dozens of millions and hundreds of millions of events a month. There might be no need to store this information more than a particular amount of time, because this message was sent, the email was sent. You can keep it for debugging purposes and kind of making sure that after a particular amount of time, basically it will be evicted from your main MongoDB instance. And this is again controlling the actual growth and the amount of objects you have to store. And again, because you store less information, there will be less index sizes. You will have to pay less money basically for the MongoDB instance, and etc. And again, this is configurable. So really depending on the use case of how much do you need the retention of this information. But in like almost all situations, like there is no need to save this information for years to come, specifically for the information that was already delivered over ephemeral channels like SMS or email and etc. So a controllable TTL over the indexes and the actual entities in MongoDB is another very big improvement to make sure that your kind of collections are not growing like indefinitely, and it's more controlled in terms of your actual performance and growth and scaling of the actual MongoDB instance you will have to manage on your own. So TTL indexes are like a very noticeable and a very big impact in terms of the overall performance of your MongoDB instance when using Novu. So this one is really, really important, specifically for folks who are sending quite a lot of information each month. Um, what else? So there have been so much work around so many areas, and we've improved a lot about the observability and kind of monitoring capabilities, and again to understand the bottlenecks, to understand the areas where we need to focus and invest more time. Some other changes, but this is more related to our cloud version, again, is a better separation of tenant processing to make sure that we have like independent tenant processing, so one tenant wouldn't pollute, and block basically the queue for other tenants. So we introduced like a more dynamic queue management. But again, this is more relevant for the cloud folks and less for the self-hosted. But again, for people who are using the managed service, you should again see an increased response rate, and like the time to process your particular events that you're sending reduced significantly. So really, really excited about this. What else? So we spoke about performance, and like I can keep doing that. We can maybe go back to it later, and I would like maybe to show some more like a feature related things that will be part of this release that I'm really excited about. So Emil, if you can share my screen back, I would love to go over the first thing, and this one is called the headless library improvements. So basically, the headless library is something that we've been discussed quite a lot over the past few weeks, and this is basically creating JavaScript UI specific library to interact with the Novo notification center. And basically, what it means is if you are creating your own custom UIs in Angular, Vue, or React or whatever, you can use the headless service to actually create your own experience. And we are getting, so basically you have the API to initialize the session, fetch notification, all the functionality that is available from our React UI component, listening to new socket events and things like this. And the whole API reference is really available here, so you can see all the available methods you could actually utilize to create your own custom notification center experience. And the headless really allows more flexibility, to more types of frameworks and more customer types that could be used to implement a fully functional notification center experience. And
How it was before?
uh, so before, the only way you could actually do this is either reverse engineer the Novo API, which understand like, okay, how we're initializing the calls and etc., and implement it by yourself. The second option was if you were using the React, if you're using React and you're lucky to use React, we also expose all of those methods also in the React component as hooks. which is
Hmm.
kind of a very helpful utility.
Yeah.
But if you were been using, for example, Angular or Vue or any other framework, you've been relying on either the iframe solution we had, which is again, it's a bit limited, it's a bit,
It
not as
felt really
performant.
limited, right?
Yeah, exactly. Um, Okay, so basically, once you have other frameworks, you can create, and this is where we can use, a lot of material. And I already spoke with Prosper, and I think it could be an amazing, creating some cool looking, UI notification centers, like with different frameworks and things like this. It would be really, really, really fantastic. So we're using the source code for our own UI. So this headless library is great for us. So the question, Tiffany, is that did you use the actual headless library before already, or you've been just using the direct APIs under it? So the we didn't introduce, like, in terms of the headless library was not documented in a way. So the first thing we did is making sure that is documented and is available on our docs as well. So, and also adding new functionality that was missing from it before. For example, again, consolidating all the socket information, consolidating all the missing API requests for seeing the fetch notification. So basically, like, everything you need to actually create a notification center experience is now available in the headless library, and you can also take it out and use it inside your own systems. I don't believe there should be any breaking changes for you, Tiffany. But again, it really depends on did you use the actual headless library. In that case, really, this is what we've seen, people, like, because we're open source, like, people were going and like checking out the source code, how we're using it, and just implementing it. We just made it as a public API and library, JavaScript library. So Tiffany, you could just use the headless package instead of working against the API. It should probably remove quite a lot of code from your end, and you will just have to maintain less things. And this API, again, because it's public, in terms of kind of the changing pace, it will obviously will be announced once things are changing there. I hope it answered your question. So the headless library is really a cool thing, and specifically for folks who coming from different frameworks other than React, and even things like React Native and etc., because it's a data based kind of framework. So you can fetch the data and create your own UI on whatever framework you're using. So that's really, really cool. Next thing in line. So we've done also some changes to the workflow editor. If you can share my screen, Emil. All right,
Do you
it's
hear any weird noise?
uh, I do not. Maybe it's on. I hope it's not coming from my end.
No, no, it's not. It's not funny on it. Okay.
All right. So do you see my screen?
Yes, it's visible.
Cool. So one of the cool things about this cycle as well is that we are changing the actual workflow editor to be a bit more simpler and less kind of things you need to press on. So it will be easier for you to kind of interact with it and create new workflows. So basically, we have consolidated the initial settings page. So if I will go to, let's take a look at the old one. So basically we have this screen and this with three dots. So every time you want to edit something, you need to like go here and then switch to this page, and then only you see this. And we had this wonky kind of navigation pattern here. Basically we consolidated everything under one screen, and the way it works right now, so once you go, for example, you can either create a new workflow or enter a new one. You will immediately be redirected to the actual canvas, and this is the main area of modifying the notification and actually working on it. So you don't have to go through this annoying step every time you want to edit something, because you're always redirected to what is important when you're editing something. And this small but very big change kind of affects very kind of specifically companies that work a lot with this editor. It's much easier kind of in terms of the user experience to just go to where it's important, better to have this extra step in between. So this is one page. So basically, we consolidated everything here. So the actual notification template is also accessible to edit directly from here, or it is also available from this cog settings. So you can actually find all the previous settings we had, things like identifier, description, the actual group, some of the user preference things provided here. And also the configuration of providers. This is a new thing we've added. So instead for you to go back to the integration store, you can actually configure providers back from here without actually leaving out this flow. So you can connect your email provider or any other providers directly from the workflow editor in a much easier way. So
Amazing change.
yeah, and again, this is like a lot of small things, but they add up, and this is a very we have our new product designer join the team, and like you already see a lot of the UX pattern changes we are doing, and like this is as always we are iterating and kind of trying to improve it over time. So this is like there is a lot of small changes here that really add up to something really fantastic in my opinion. So the next part, and this is the consolidation of the actual editing flows for like email and other channels we are seeing here, is that basically when you click on an actual node, you can see this kind of floating area of everything that you need to know. So you don't have two clicks. So previously you had, if I will go back here, you would have to do something like click here and then edit template, and only then you will be redirected here. In the new system, basically a click on the actual node and you are already in it, and you still can have all of the previously available toggles. You can add the filters right from here and kind of still have all the previously available information, but just in a bit different way. You can also change the name of the actual node. So you can say email, let's say like a repeated email, or this is like email about something. So when you are actually looking at the workflow editor, instead of seeing just email, this is specifically relevant if you have more complex workflows with multiple email steps or multiple in-app steps. So you can actually name them right now and really uh, uh, it just makes clear what you're about to edit and etc. So
Right.
this is regarding that. Another really cool thing that's been added, and this is like again those small things, is that we are actually utilizing the browser routing right now for those screens. So for example, if I'm in the email editing screen and I will actually reload my sorry, I didn't save it. Let's go to here. Why didn't I think I didn't save it, but basically the actual nodes are URL redirected. So basically if I'm changing the route, you can see that the URL is actually changing. This is very useful if you want to do something like share this link to someone, or kind of just get back to the previous point you had. Previously we've been relied on client-side state to actually manage the actual state of the workflow editor, and now each page is an actual redirected URL path that you can utilize and share with your team. So really, really exciting change. The next area, and this is again a bit cleaning up, is the get snippet area. So we have both the run test and get the snippet available from here. And it just again kind of tidying up the UI and making sure that it's a bit less cluttered, and you can still access the important thing, but in a more compact way, so you can focus on what's kind of the main areas. And we do have some other changes, like a smaller changes of how the digest screen looks, and some other minor modifications. But in general, um, this is kind of the first step of a lot more UX improvements in this area, and kind of a lot of other modifications when it comes to the actual workflow editor screen. So
DM asked a question regarding the headless library that
mhm.
we discussed before. Um, I don't know just why it's not really appearing here on our dashboard, but um, is the headless library is a REST or a WebSocket or both?
Both. So basically, you both doing the actual fetch notifications command, get and sim count, all of those stuff. But it also have the embedded socket connection. So basically, you can listen to events like unsim count change or unread count change. So it's serving as a both thing. So again, just for you not to handle kind of your own implementation out of it, so you can use it out of the box with the Novo headless UI.
Okay.
So yeah, this is the workflow editor changes. I'm really like it's we're finalizing some of the testing around it, and kind of will be deploying it to our staging environment quite soon. And right after that, it will also be available as part of the 0.14 version, which I think is really really nice. Let's see. I hope I didn't forget anything big. So we did some improvements also for the onboarding funnels, for the notification center component, and etc. And this, I'm not sure if it will be available in 0.14 or in the patch version, but we will probably discuss it in our next office hours once we come to this. And another big thing we started to do during this cycle is investigating a bit more into the timed digest or scheduled digest. We're still finalizing the name for it. For example, allowing use cases such as I want to send a notification every week, in 9 a.m. or twice a week and 6 in the morning, or once a day, for example, and all the events that will be digested during this day or week or whatever will be collected dynamically. And this is different from what we had today, because today we are starting a digest window once a new trigger comes into the system. So basically, we receive the notification and then we delay the execution for the 10 minutes from the moment of the trigger. Right now, it's changing in a way that the user will actually receive notifications, for example, each day at 9 a.m. So if you send a single event in 8:55, in the day, it will be delivered in 5 minutes. Or if you send a notification in 1 p.m., it will be wait until the next scheduled day, just basically the day after 9 a.m., for example. So, and again, it's configurable, so you can, do a weekday, 2 times a day, once a month, whatever your preference. And we are also hoping to implement, as part of this release, also kind of on the user preference configurable way. So a user can say, I want to get this once a day or once a week. And this is
Mhm.
configurable by him on the actual notification center user preferences. So this is something will be available in 0.15. But we started a lot of the technical research and kind of trying to see how everything fits in our system during this cycle as well. So we'll be updating on it.
Amazing. Okay. So do you have any other things that we need to go over?
So at least from my end, I think that's about it, right? I hope I didn't forget anything, but again, we are available also on Discord, and like we can continue the office hours on
Right.
Discord any time of the week. So thank you for coming here.
Yeah, so if anyone has any questions or something that you would like us to address now, feel free to do it in the upcoming minute. But if you cannot really, handle the pressure, or uh, you can't really formulate your question right away, so just feel free to, as Dima said, head to our Discord and ask the questions there. We'll be more than happy to address it. All right. Okay, so thanks everyone for coming, for participating, and joining us for this office hours. And the next one is going to be in 2 weeks. And I suppose that we already will be presenting the 0.14 release and really showcasing everything that we can. And yeah, and that's it. So thank you so much for coming, Dima. Thank you so much for this really comprehensive explanations and sharing. It was fantastic.
Um,
Um, we have a question from Vipal, the last one. Do you guys plan to integrate WhatsApp provider?
So today we have, I think, let me double check. I'm always like, we're like so many providers are coming and going. I just want to double check the current status of it. So I know we have an open integration using, I think, Twilio for WhatsApp as something you can actually just use Twilio with passing phone number for WhatsApp. I will need to double check, and we also have an open community contribution for WhatsApp, but we still need to finalize some stuff before we can actually approve it and merge it into the system. So not as of now, like a direct implementation, but I hope we will be able to support one quite soon. I don't have any date for it yet.
We have another question. Unfortunately, I cannot show it on our chat. Um,
Yeah, it seems like the the YouTube comments stopped coming in on Restream.
Yeah. So, but let me just read it to you. So, DM also asked, said that we have a number of different organizations within Novo. Each has their own workflow on providers for email delivery. On the subscriber side, they can receive events, emails, etc., from multiple organizations. Now, emails will be sent uh, to each subscriber per organization, and this is good. But for in-app notification, we would like to be able to retrieve all messages at the same time for the single subscriber. Is it something that could be useful?
I think it will be hard to answer like right now for it. I'm not sure I 100% understood the use case. So like I guess is having like multiple novel organizations. I guess what I'm suggesting is let's keep this conversation on support at our Discord. I will
Yeah.
just have a bit more room to kind of better understand the actual use case behind it. I guess it's some sort of a connected to multi-tenancy, so we can try to figure something out. So, DM, if we could just post it out on Discord and we can continue the conversation there,
Yeah.
I think it will be more effective.
Good, good. All right. So again, thank you all for coming. Thank you so much for your time. And we will see you on Discord and the next office hours where we'll be releasing and presenting all the features that were released on the 0.14. So stay tuned. And again, thank you so much and have a good day.
All right. Thank you. Bye bye.